Straight up the stairs, double doors on the left, and to the closet on the right wall. A lot of clothes, a hell of a lot of shoes. These two were crazy clothes hogs, but he could admire the man's suits, that fine, fine wool, and the shirts with the monogram on the cuffs, the soft leather of designer shoes. He admired, too, the woman's collection of sweaters, cashmere, merino wool. He felt a tug of temptation, wanted to take one, just one, for his mother, so warm and soft. But that would bring questions, and he didn't want to lie about a gift. Instead, he played his light over the safe and smiled. Hi there. I've been working with your brother for a while now. Let's get acquainted. He shook his head as he got out his stethoscope. Basic combination lock. They should have done better. His first step was to find the combination length. To make sure all the wheels disengaged, he turned the dial clockwise 3 times. He put the bell of the stethoscope beside the dial and began to turn it counterclockwise. When he heard the first 2 clicks, he stopped, noted down the number on the dial. He repeated twice more to be sure. Good start. Moving the dial counterclockwise, he stopped it opposite his first number, started back, slow, careful, to where he'd part the wheels, listening for clicks, noting down the number until he heard no more. A 4-number combination, he thought. And now his math skills, who said you never used algebra in real life, came into play. He drew 2 line graphs, labeled them x-axis for starting point, y-axis for the right contact point. He reset the lock, then put it at 0. He worked in silence, just those clicks, worked patiently, noting down each contact area, then graphing the points, x value, y value. It took him 33 minutes of painstaking work, careful listening, exact math to identify the 4 numbers. 8, 9, 14, 2. Now he needed the sequence. He started to try the numbers as written down, then stopped. It's a date. Jesus, it's Valentine's Day. Probably their first date or something, in 98. Could it be that easy? A 4-digit combination could mean close to 2,000 variables. No way he'd hit on the first. But he tried it. 2, 14, 9, 8. And when he pulled the lever, the door opened smooth as silk. Oh shit, just like that. The thrill nearly rose to the level of that first strange, outrageous orgasm at 12. He pulled out his stopwatch, hit the button. 35 minutes, 12 seconds. Not bad, but I'll get better. He drew out a glass-topped case, no lock, that would hold a dozen ladies' watch. It currently had 7, and one was the graph. He took it out, shined his penlight over it. He'd never held anything that cost so much. And there was beauty here, he could see that. The way the diamonds fired under the light, and the sapphires mated with them gleamed. He'd learn more about gems, he promised himself. They had, well, life in them. More fun than stamps or old coins. He put the watch in the pouch he'd brought, put the case back, took out the next, and studied the men's collection. He settled on the Rolex, a classic for a reason, then replaced the case. He drew out other cases, cufflinks, earrings, bracelets, necklaces. Small collections, he supposed, but impressive and tempting. Gotta get home, he reminded himself, and he still had to go by the storage place, stow the tape. But in the end, his fingers simply reached for a pair of square-cut diamond earrings, small but classy, and probably not easily traceable. He closed the safe, spun the dial, checked the area to be sure he left nothing of himself behind. He retraced his steps and was walking through the thickly falling snow less than an hour after he'd stepped into the house. And with, he figured, about 200,000 in his backpack. He was going to push for 20%. He'd taken 10, but he'd push and maybe get 15. And with 30,000, he'd knock back a shitload of the medical bills. In the spring, they'd have that fresh air, and the heating bills would vanish. Maybe, just maybe, he could talk his mother into taking a vacation in the summer. They'd sold their old car long ago, but they could rent one. He had his learner's permit. He'd taken the course in school, and Will's dad took him out in his car so he could get practice. He could get his license, then rent a car, and they'd drive to the ocean. She told him how much she wanted to see the ocean. Plus, sea air was supposed to be healing and all that. They could get a motel near the beach for a few days. The drive to and from, that would be vacation too. They hadn't had a vacation since cancer, he thought, then shoved it away. He'd had a great night. No point in spoiling it. Time to look ahead to spring, to summer, to college in the fall. But winter held on, and March went out as ferociously as it came in. By the middle of April, he decided Chicago had become the ice planet Hoth. Then slowly, spring began to crack winter's city icy grip. They threw open the windows, let the air in. Sure, they had to close them at night or freeze to death, but it was a start. Harry felt hope bloom, like the crocuses his mother had planned and planted when he'd been a little boy. He was even seeing a new girl, Allison, science nerd, but totally cute. Nothing serious. He didn't want serious before he started college. But he had a prom date, and that mattered. He walked home in the almost balmy air, juggling his night's schedule in his head. Homework. Had to keep those grades up. A little more research on precious gems. Dinner. Maybe he could talk Mom into ordering pizza. And he had potentially lucrative target he wanted to take a closer look at. He walked into the house, mood high, Hey, Mom, I'm grabbing a snack. Figure I aced my chem chest. Figure I aced my chem test today. I got a crap load of homework, but I'm all over it. He had a bag of Doritos in one hand, a can of Coke in the other when she came out of the bedroom. You used to want to fold it over P, B, and J after school. Times change. I need the carb and caffeine rush for the calculus and the paper I have to write for. It got through that high mood. The way she looked at him cut right through it. What's wrong? Let's sit down, Harry. Mom, please, let's sit down. How about you bring me one of those Cokes? He made his mind blank. It was all he could do. He poured hers into a glass over ice, because that's how she liked it. Then he sat at the kitchen table with her. I went in for a PET scan today. What? You didn't tell me you had one coming up. I go with you. You have school. Mags went. And I didn't tell you, baby, because the doctor wanted one. He wanted one because, baby, the chemo's not working this time. No, they said it was. They said. It was, for a short time last fall into the winter, but not any more, Harry, and not for a while. He'd known, hadn't he? Inside he'd known. The circles under her eye, deeper, her energy sliding away like the flesh on her bones. They'll try a different treatment. Harry, she took both his hands. It spread. They've done all they can do. The hands holding his felt like bony feathers, so light, so thin and sharp. I don't believe that. You can't believe it either. I need you to be brave for me. It's not fair. I shouldn't have to ask you to be brave. None of it's been fair. It stole your childhood, and I hate that. I hate it. I'm not saying I won't fight. I'm not saying that. But we're stopping the chemo. Mom, please. It might buy me a couple of months. Months where I'm sick from it. But that's all. I want the time I have left with you, where I can be your mom, at least for most of it. She squeezed his hands hard. 6 months, 8 or 9, maybe, with more treatments. I'd go through it 100 times, Harry, if it meant I could watch you grow into a man, graduate from college, fall in love, start a family. But I can't. My heart wants that. You're my everything. But my body won't let me. You beat it before. Not this time. Help me make this 6 months good ones. You beat it before, he repeated. When she put her arms around him, he was a child again, and the child pressed his face to his mother's breasts and wept. On the last day of school, the last page, as Harry thought of it, of a 12-year chapter of his life, he heard hysterical laughter spilling out from the open windows of the house, where flowers bloomed in painted pots beside the front door. She laughed more now, his mother, and it looked so much brighter, happier. He could convince himself, almost. They'd beaten the enemy inside her after all. She planted flowers, she cleaned houses, played music, went shopping. She bought a new dress to wear to his graduation. She said every day was a gift, and he tried to see it her way. But sometimes, in the night, in the dark, he thought each day that passed was one less. Today he heard her laughing, giggling, he thought, like one of his classmates, former classmates now. He walked in to see her and Mags at the kitchen table laughing their asses off. Mag's short skullcap of hair blasted a sapphire blue. That was no real surprise, but his mother's short new growth and bubblegum pink knocked him back. The two of them grinned over at him. "What do you think?" Dana asked. I I think you look like Easter eggs. If they had them on Mars. That brought on more insane laughter. I've got enough of both colors to do yours. I can mix them for a nice purple. You got a kind of George Clooney Caesar do going, Mags observed. Purple would set it off. Hard pass. Dana rose and got a Coke out of the refrigerator before he could get one for himself. I'll cover it with a scarf for graduation. Don't worry. He took the Coke, bent down to kiss her cheek. You will not. I bet nobody else is going to have a mom and an aunt with pink and blue hair. She leaned in for a hug. So thin, so thin. He pushed that way and reminded himself, here, she's happy. Mags ambushed me with it after we finished the Gobbles house. And I thought, what the hell? And in all the excitement I forgot. She clamped her hands on his face. It's the last day of school. My baby, my 6'2" baby, just had his last day of school. Uh-oh. I need to go put something sentimental on. It's already in my head, Dana told Mags. I can still see you, my little man, in your red jacket, carrying your Scooby-Doo lunchbox when I walked you to your first day of school. And when we got there, you just said, bye, and walked right in by yourself, fearless. You were always fearless. He remembered it because he remembered everything. Got that from my mom. I'm going to fix you a snack. You must have a party to go to tonight. Are you going with Allison? She's a nice girl, a smart one. She's a nice girl and smart, but I've got a date with somebody else tonight. Actually, two somebodies. Dana stopped, turned back. You're not going to spend the first night of the rest of your life with me and Mags. I think I get to decide how I want to spend the first night of the rest. And I made plans. What kind of plans? My plans. We've got a couple of hours, so no time for that snack. Make enough of whatever for all of us. Then I'm going to mow the lawn, which would take like 10 minutes considering the size of it. It's a surprise, he continued, anticipating the questions. What you're wearing's fine. You're going to want a sweater maybe, or a jacket, but that's it. A mystery, Mags said. A mysterious surprise. I already like it. They didn't have a clue, even when they boarded the train, and he refused to give hints. But as they got closer and more people piled on wearing caps and jerseys, Mags gave Harry a quick shoulder punch. Wrigley! Night game against the Marlins. Maybe. You don't really like baseball, Dana began. I've never understood where I went wrong, but I like it, okay? But my ladies love it. This is great. This is awesome. Man, I should have my bloodstone pendant for energy. No, no, the black oinks. Mags dug through her purse. I have to have something in here. My Lucky Cubs hat's at home, but I can visualize it. Who's pitching? I can't remember who's pitching. Mitter, Harry told her. Okay. Oh well. I'll visualize hard. He loved the way they talked about the game around him, on the train, on the walk to the stadium, and under the big red sign. He loved the buzz from them and everyone else. My treat, Dana said, for the last day of school. Too late. Harry pulled the tickets out of his back pocket. Already done, for the woman who got me through the last day of school. Harry, those are box seats. You can't. Already done. And everybody's getting a new lucky hat. Don't spoil the boys' plans. Mags gave Dana's hand a squeeze. Take the gift. You're right, you're right. We didn't even get to the game last season, and now? Box seats? Oh, Mags, look. First base side, right behind the dugout. He bought them caps and one for himself, and heard his mother's reverent sigh as they walked into the stadium, and the green grass, the rich brown mound, the white baselines filled the world back to the ivy-covered wall. We're practically on the field. I can smell the grass. Mags, remember when we used to watch games from the rooftop? She gestured to the buildings outside the walls. Sure I do. Uncle Silas would take us up there, ply us with hot dogs and root beer. I've told you about Uncle Silas, your grandmother's brother. I got his name in the middle. You sure do. He fell in love with a woman who didn't love him back, and he pined for her until he died. Never married. He had a heart attack when you were just a baby. Harry knew the story. Mags and Dana's father had taken off when Dana had still been in diapers. Their mother had worked in her brother's butcher shop, raised two girls. She'd been killed by a stray bullet in a drive-by shooting when Harry's mother had been 17. The same age he realized he was now. He might have had a wonky heart, but it was a sweet one. Those were the good times. Max patted Dana's thigh. Real good times. They were. Dana breathed deep. This is even a better one. They are hot dogs. And they ate them and drank beer. Though he didn't have much of a taste for it, Harry sipped some from his mother's cup. Solidarity. They cheered, they booed, argued calls. His mother looked radiant. That was the word that came to his mind. She sprang up to watch the flight of a long ball, hooting when the center field caught it a few feet shy of the wall, moaned at a strikeout. The sun went down, the lights came on. More through accident than design, he caught a foul that lined straight at him, and that had his mother up and dancing. Fast hands, Max said, shooting him a knowing look. Sharp reflexes. After he shook the feeling back into his hand, he presented it to Dana. Your souvenir, ma'am. Whether it was the lucky caps the bloodstone Mags dug out of her purse, or the Cubs a solid night, Mitter pitched a shutout, and the boys walked off the field with 14 runs. Harry didn't have his mother's passion for the game, but he knew a purist wouldn't rave over a 14 to zip 9 innings. She leaned her head against his shoulder as they sat, as people filed out. You know what beats a summer night at Wrigley? What? Nothing. They got off the train a stop early, bought ice cream cones, and walked Mags to her apartment. As they walked the few blocks to home, he put an arm around his mother's shoulder just like she had once put hers around his. I bet you're tired. A little, she admitted, but a good tired. It was a terrific surprise. You've always been my very best surprise. You never ask about your father. What to ask, he said, and genuinely meant it. He doesn't matter. He does, because without him, I wouldn't have you. She leaned against him, sighed. I should tell you because you should know. We were young. I was so sad when we lost my mother. Mangs was mad, but I couldn't push out of the sad. Uncle Silas tried so hard, but he was grieving too. Anyway, there was a boy, and he wanted me, and I wanted him. We didn't love each other. I don't want you to think he broke my heart, because it wasn't like that. They turned to the house, and she stopped at the door. Let's sit a minute. She lowered to the stoop with the flowers blooming on either side. We were only together for a few weeks. Had already drifted apart when I realized I was pregnant. He started college. Mags had gone off to be a carny, and I was working in the butcher shop. It's going to sound odd, but I didn't panic or wonder what to do. I was thrilled from the first moment. Young, foolish, but thrilled. And all the sad just melted away. I had to tell the boy, but I wasn't surprised by his reaction. I couldn't blame him for it, and I never have. She looked over at him, her eyes tired but level. You shouldn't either. That's why I'm telling you. He was barely 18, just starting his life like you're about to. We didn't love or want each other. I know I could have pressed him to contribute, and maybe I should have, but I didn't want to. You were mine, and why should you have someone in your life who didn't want you when I did? He'd resent you and me, the way I realized my father had come to resent my mother and Max and me. No, I wasn't going to take you there. That's a painful road. I wouldn't want it any other way, if that's what you're asking me. Good. That's good. Anyway, Max came back a few weeks before you were born. Was right there when you made your debut. She came back again when Uncle Silas died. I wish you could remember him, Harry, but you were just a baby. He adored you. He left enough for me to put a deposit down on this house. Then we started the business, got it going pretty good once you were in school, and here we are. She leaned into him. I had the best gift. the greatest love, come out of all that sad. I just want you to remember that. And she gave him a big, noisy kiss on the cheek. No sad tonight. I know I don't remember him, Uncle Silas, but I know him through you and Mags. I remember all the stories you've told me. She smiled, tapped his temple. Magic memory. Yeah. And he knew he'd never forget sitting with her on the front stoop on a summer night with her pretty flowers beside him. She wore her pink hair and her hair. She wore her pink hair and her new dress to his graduation, and with Mag's help threw a party for him and his friends. But as June faded into July, the dark circles haunted her eyes, and he could see the pain above those circles far too often. When she could barely cross a room without running out of breath, it was his turn to tell her to sit down so they could talk. I made a decision. She sipped at the old tea Mags insisted had healing properties. About what? I am taking a gap year. Harry? No, you listen. He knew she couldn't fight him, and part of him hated that, hated knowing she'd grown too weak to fight. A lot of people do it, and that's what I'm going to do. Mags needs me to keep the business going. You need me, and I need to be here. I need it, Mom. Northwestern's not going anywhere. Your scholarship, you worked so hard. It'll hold over. I'm sorry. She squeezed her eyes shut. I'm sorry that I can't argue with you, that I can't make you go. I wanted to watch you walk into college the way you walked into elementary school. I wanted that. I hate this. I hate knowing I'm not going to be there for you. Listen. She had to take a moment. It was one of the bad days, and they both knew it. I talked to Anita at hospice this morning. She's been great, and she understands I don't want to go into the hospital. I want to stay here. You'll need help. Mags and I can take care of you. Don't I know it? But if you need help, they're there. I've made arrangements. I wrote everything down. I know it's hard for you to talk about this, but we need to. Okay. It made him feel sick and scared, but he just nodded. Cremation. That's what I want. No big ceremony or anything. You and Mags, you can decide where to spread the ashes, whatever and whenever. His stomach tightened into sweaty fists, and the heat slicked his body like a second skin, but he nodded again. Okay, don't worry. I had your name added to the house. I did that months ago, so it'll be yours. You should sell it. We've got some good equity in it. You should sell it to help with college. Property values are going up, and there's a lot of buyers who want to take a place like this and gentrify it. She reached for his hands, and he felt the tremor in hers. Don't you waste that brain of yours, my boy. You're so crazy smart. You go to college. You find your passion, explore, travel, see places. All kinds of places. You're tough, Harry. Smart and strong. And you're kind. I did a damn good job. Yeah, you did. Be there for Mags. She may be your crazy aunt, but she's never let us down. She pushed the tea away. Even if she does try to pour this crap into me. How about a Coke? She smiled. I'd love a Coke. As summer faded, so did her strength. Mags moved out of her apartment and spent her nights on the air mattress beside her sister's bed. Harry spent his days cleaning houses with Mags and using the money from any nightwear to pay a professional aide to care for his mother when they couldn't. In the fall, most of his friends left for college. The pang he felt came and went at odd times. When he took out the trash, or tried his shoes, or hit the library for another stack of books to read to his mother. They bought a wheelchair so they could take her out in sunlight and fresh air. But even in the glory of an Indian summer, she got chilled if they stayed out beyond an hour. By November, Dana's world contracted to her bedroom. She ate little, slept long. They had rented a hospital bed and moved the old dresser into the living room, so they had room for 2 beds, 2 chairs. Friends and neighbors and clients and flowers or food or both. He'd never forget that Will's mother came by 3 or 4 nights a week after work to sit with her, whether or not Dana slept through the visit. Take your aunt out and buy her a coffee, she told him. So they escaped the house that smelled too much of flowers and sickness and walked in the sharp November air. Mags took his hands. Honey, we have to let her go. He tried to pull his hand away, but Mags clamped down. It's love holding her here now, for you and for me too. She's suffering. The medicine helped with the pain, but it doesn't stop it. The pot helps with the nausea, but it's still there. She's drifting from minute to minute, caught between worlds now, and hanging on to this one for us. He wanted to curse her, shove her away, but he stared straight ahead, seeing nothing. She said every day's a gift, and she was asking Mrs. Forrester about Will when we left. She picked out a new book to start tonight. She's got such a strong will and such a huge love for you. It's a crap thing for me to say to a boy who just turned 18, but she won't move on until you tell her you'll be okay. So you're ready to just let her die? It was Mags who let go of his hand. No, I'm never going to be ready, but I know she is. They didn't speak any more about it, or about anything, as he circled the block, and the resentment inside him built like storm clouds. He had plenty more to say, and promised he'd say it after Will's mom left, after his own mother slept. He'd be damned if his crazy, stupid, selfish aunt would tell him what to do, feel, think. And if she was tired of helping take care of her own sister, she could go to hell. He'd do it all himself. When they walked back to the house, Mags went straight to the kitchen. I'm going to heat up some soup for Dana. Do you want some? No. Will's mother came out of the bedroom. We had a nice talk. She moved over to hug Harry. Don't be upset if she thinks you're home on a college break now. She's a little tired and confused. Okay, it's okay. Mrs. Forrester, I really appreciate you coming to see her like this. Your mama and we've been friends since you and Will started kindergarten. She gave him a quick extra squeeze. I'm going on home now, Mags, she called out. You let me know if you need anything. I will. Thank you, Keisha. She gave Harry's arm a pat. You take care of each other now. He'd take care of everything, he thought, including telling his aunt where she could stick her advice. But first they needed to work together to get some food into his mom. He knew now how to focus, how to set everything else outside the walls of that focus and get a task done. He took off his jacket, had started to hang it up when he heard his mother's talking, not calling for him, just talking and laughing. Jacket still in hand, he walked to the bedroom. She leaned against the elevated back of the bed, her eyes too bright. She wore the red sweater Max had knitted over her pale blue nightgown, and she smiled at him. Hi, baby. Welcome home. I was just telling Uncle Silas you were coming for the weekend. He's got center-cut pork chops on special, and he'll bring some over for dinner. He stumbled over what to say, just stood there, and Mags breezed in with a tray. I hope there's mashed potatoes to go with them and no spinach. Peas and crescent rolls. I get to whap the can on the counter. You always get to. I'm the big sister. I'm not really hungry right now, Dana. I'm not really hungry right now, Dana said, as Mags spooned up some soup. For Mrs. Cardini's Mindstone? Your favorite. And Harry felt shame. It just washed over him in a hot flood as he watched his aunt spoon a little soup into her sister's mouth. She makes the best. She does. And Harry's going to start reading your new book while you eat. What's this one? We got the story of an ordinary man's extraordinary journey, adventure, redemption, love. Sex? I'm not reading sex out loud to my mom and aunt. Your boy's a prude, Dane, but he knows how to give a dramatic reading. He's studying books in college, and he'll be in school plays again. I can't eat any more, Mags. She turned her head away. I got my suitcase out, didn't I? Did I finish packing? I need to finish packing. Max set the spoon down, put the tray aside. Harry saw the tears wash over the blue of her eyes. You're all set. Oh, good. Oh, sure, I see. She smiled at something only she could see across the room. All packed and ready to go. You'll be too busy to miss me, baby, with college and everything. Still smiling, her eyes are so bright and sunk so deep. She reached for his hand. I'll send you postcards. You can make a scrapbook. I always meant to make a scrapbook. You'll be okay, right, Harry? You're all grown up. You'll be okay while I'm gone on this trip. He took her hand while tears burned behind his eyes. Yeah, I'll be okay. You and Mags will look out for each other. Yeah, we will. You don't have to worry. I'm a little tired. I'll finish packing later. She closed her eyes, and as she drifted to sleep, Mags rose and picked up the tray. I need a drink, she said, and walked out. When he came out, she poured 2 glasses. Crap box wine is still wine, just like crap pizza is still pizza. If you don't want any, I'll drink your share. I'm sorry. When she shook her head, he plowed on. I'm sorry for how I acted, what I said, and the worst things I thought. She's your mom. She's your baby sister. Mags gulped down wine as tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm so pissed off, so bloody pissed off at whoever is in charge. What's the point or purpose in making her go through all this? None. And I don't care what anybody says. She dropped down at the kitchen table, used the heels of her hands to swipe at tears, and smeared her mascara. The last few nights she's been talking to Uncle Silas, or our mother, and she's happy when she does that. I don't care if you believe she really sees them. Everybody's entitled to believe whatever as long as they don't pound you over the head with it. But I believe it. I believe they're waiting for her. He sat, tried the wine. Marginally better than cheap beer, he decided. I don't know what I believe, but I know you were right before. She's fighting for us, and it hurts her. It's taking everything away from her, and you were right. She needed to know I'd be okay. I don't want her to go. I know. We're doing it for her. I need to ask you not to go out at night until I wouldn't be able to reach you if I'll be here. 2 nights later, she slipped away while he read to her, and Mags knitted an endless scarf. She hadn't wanted a funeral, so they didn't have one. People still came to the house and brought flowers or food or both. He was surprised how many clients made the journey or sent sympathy cards. On a cold, blustery night in November, he broke through the security at Wrigley Field and led Mags to what would have been home plate during the season. I figured you must be doing something like this, breaking and entering, but I didn't figure you were so damned good at it. Looks different empty and heading toward winter. But she'd like this, right? She'd love this. It's the right place for it. Chicago girl, through and through. Okay then. Do you want to, do something? Say something? Her spirit's already flown. Let the rest fly with her. It's enough. He opened the box, held it high, and let the wind carry the ashes. Look at her go, Harry. Part of her will always be here, cheering on her cubs. They'll never know how lucky they are to have her, but we will. We do. We do. He watched the wind take the ashes, carry them, swirl them. When they rode the train home, Mags patted his leg. What are you going to do with the house? You can live there as long as you want. Can't do it. For now, until you decide, sure. But I couldn't live there without her. I don't want Chicago without her. Not once you decide. You could start at Northwestern, maybe even next month. He shook his head. Can't do it. It's the same for me. I don't want to be here, not without her. Where then? I don't know. Maybe just somewhere warm at first, away from the damn cold. What about you? I've got a line on an old VW bus. He turned to stare at her. Her hair was currently the color of a ripe eggplant. You're kidding me. I'm not. I'm thinking west, and I can start at my phone. Psychic business again. Madame Magdalene knows all, sees all. I'll buy you a decent car. The Volkswagen bus is a classic for a reason, pal. I have fond memories of previous encounters in same. Then I'll get you the damn bus. Make sure it's restored and in good condition. I'm not going to visualize you broken down on some road in the desert. Let me do this for you. From her. She'd want me to. You're not going to make me cry on this train. You have that kind of money? I have enough, and I'm going to sell the house, so I'll have more. She wanted college for you, Harry. She wanted that so much. I'll get there, that's a promise. He knew he should wait until spring, better real estate market, but he put the house on the market, then sold it in just under 2 weeks for 5,000, over asking. He bought himself a second-hand Volvo, low mileage, good condition. Clearing out the house, all his mother's things, was the hardest part of it, but when it was done, he stood with Mags in the little front yard. She wore the red sweater and a pair of his mother's earrings. Her VW bus, two-toned, red and white, sat in front of his black Volvo. That is one boring card, kid. Boring cars don't get noticed. You'll be racking up tickets before you get to Iowa. The day I can't churn a cop out of a ticket's the day I pack it in. She turned to him. We need to make a pact. Okay. Once a year. More is fine. But at least once a year, we meet up. I come to you, you come to me. We meet somewhere, doesn't matter. And we spend a few days. You're all I have left for her and of her, Harry. You are my family. Let's pick the first date now, location to come. Before is fine, but let's say April 1st. April Fools? Easy to remember. We meet up April 1st. Want to pinky swear it? Let's try this instead. She wrapped around him. He smelled his mother on her, his mother's a favorite shampoo, and just buried his face in Aunt Mag's hair. It works. Deal is sealed. Try to stay out of trouble. What fun is that? She eased back, cupped his face. You call me anytime. If you need somebody to post bail, I'm your girl. Same goes. Are you ready? For adventure? Always. Have some of that, Harry. Have some adventures. April 1st, she said as he walked her to the VW. Don't make a fool out of me. Deal's sealed. I love you, Max. I love you. She climbed in, slipped on rainbow lens, cat's eyes sunglasses. She had some crystals and a peace sign dangling from the rearview mirror. She took one of the crystals and passed it to him through the open window. White moonstone for safe travels. Where's yours? She pulled the chain from under her shirt. Peace out, pal. She started the car, ran like a top, and drove away. He waited until he couldn't see her, then got into the Volvo. He thought, what the hell, and hung the crystal on the rear view. He took one last look at the house. Then he drove away without turning back. Harry took Interstate 65 across Indiana, and besides Illinois, Indiana was the only other state he'd ever been in. He wanted out of that too. Someplace else, somewhere new, anywhere warm. He stuck to the highway, kept the radio blasting and the heater rolling, and felt a lift, a physical lift, when he crossed into Kentucky. He took an exit at random. He'd made a pit stop. and maybe just wander the state for a while. Bluegrass State, actually Commonwealth, he corrected, pulling out some factoids filed in his brain. Capitals of Frankfort. Ah, horses, bourbon, fried chicken, Derby, blues, Fort Knox. Fort Knox had him wondering what he'd do with gold bars if he pulled off a heist. Awesome bragging rights, except bragging would send you to a Kansas institution, Leavenworth, or Kentucky's version thereof. Besides, you couldn't stash gold bars in your backpack. He stopped to empty his bladder and fill up the Volvo, bought a Doritos, still a favorite, and a Coke. He lighted the look of the hills, a role he'd only seen in pictures or movies. He imagined them summer green, rising and falling behind fields of grazing horses. Maybe he'd enjoy a little rural living, maybe. But though the air didn't bite, it still had enough of a snap in it. He drove on, aiming south, and when the Doritos didn't fill the hole, he'd a drive-through at McDonald's for a Big Mac and large fries. The lady, about his mother's age, handed him the bag with a smile. There you go, son. You enjoy that? You enjoy that now, you hear? He found her accent warm and wonderful. Yes, ma'am. Enjoy it he did, chowing down as he crossed into Tennessee. Whiskey, Elvis, Dolly Parton, tobacco farms, barbecue and blues, and the Smoky Mountains. For a boy who'd never been more than 200 miles from home, it was like exploring a foreign country, a whole world of other, and along with the secret sauce, he tasted freedom. He considered heading southwest to Memphis and paying Graceland a visit. He couldn't claim to be a major fan of Elvis, but Iconic had appeal. Another time, he decided, and headed southeast. He'd had a vague plan to drive to the ocean. He'd never seen an actual ocean. Why not check that box first? His first look at the great Smoky Mountains had him gaping like a tourist in Times Square. Since the ocean wasn't going anywhere, he aimed for the mountains first. Before, vast meant the plains outside the city, the endless flatlands where the wind screamed and tornadoes swirled. Now it meant the stunning rise of green peaks and the valleys below. Clouds whisked through them, yes, like smoke, and the sun slanted down, winter thin. He had his first experience with switch-black roads, and took it easy mostly because he wanted to see everything all at once. He climbed and climbed, pulled into overlooks to step out and take it all in. He snapped pictures with his phone. He'd text them, he thought, to Will, to Max. He stopped again as day faded toward twilight, and this time took the small bottle from his backpack. He hadn't told Mags he'd taken some of his mother's ashes before they'd gone to Wrigley. He'd planned to spread them into the wind by the ocean, but he thought he'd release somewhere here. Share this with her. We're really high here, almost 6,000 feet. Just look how they keep going, like folding their way to North Carolina. So, it's been a pretty good day. 4 states, and I guess I'll go find a motel or whatever. But first, He uncorked the bottle and shook out some of the ashes. The mountains took her flying. In the gloaming, he got back into the car, faced the challenge of driving in the mountains at night. At one point, he stopped dead, mouth falling open in the shock as he watched a beat, an actual beat, lumber across the road like he was heading home after a hard day's work. He decided to head for the nearest civilization. He found a motel tucked in what he supposed were the foothills. The single-story spread of it consisted of cinder block walls painted red, a gravel parking lot, and an attached diner with a neon sign that read, "Eats." That sold him, as he was starving again. He checked in with a man who had an impressive beer belly under a white t-shirt and a gray, flat brown beard. He paid for a single night in cash, got a key, and learned, when he asked, the diner closed at 10. His room, he saw when he carted his duffel and backpack inside, boasted a single bed covered with a green and blue floral spread, a single dresser on which sat a clunky-looking TV, a green carpet, beige walls. He had lamps on stands on either side of the bed, and a tiny bathroom which, to his very experienced eye, actually looked more acceptably clean. He pulled the shade down on the window, then turned on the TV for company while he stripped. He unwrapped the complimentary sliver of soap and took a long shower. Nobody knew who he was or where he was, and he found that fascinating, freeing. He'd let Mags know, send the pictures, but otherwise he was no one and everyone all at once. He dressed, scooped his fingers through his hair. It had grown back into a mop again, and he was fine with that. He felt like he'd walked through a movie set. When he stepped outside, the humming ice machine, the two vending machines, the smell of pine in the cold air, not Chicago cold, but still too chilly for anything but an overnight soap. The sound of TVs muttering behind closed doors. Inside the diner, that feeling hit full bottom. The hard, bright, fluorescent lights threw everything into relief. The long counter with pie or cake stands stacked up, and the open kitchen behind it. The air smelled of grease and coffee and frying meat. Two waitresses, one about his age, the other old enough to be her grandmother, wore pink dresses with white aprons. Orange vinyl covered the seats of booths and chairs and backless, circular counter stools. Tables of white formica held napkin dispensers, condiment caddies, and upside-down coffee mugs. A couple in a booth looked exhausted as they tried riding herd on their two little kids. Traveling for the holidays, he decided. Maybe over the river and through the woods to grandmother's house. The two men arguing football over what looked like meatloaf he pegged as locals.